Did you ever hear the tragedy of the Round Table Knight named Vyke? No other tarnished was closer to the throne of the Elden Lord than Vyke. He was a gallant warrior, full of promise. Even the ancient dragons looked upon him favourably. It is said that Landsax, sister to Fortisax, took the form of a human to commune with the knights as a priestess of the ancient dragon cult. Of all the knights, Vyke the Dragon Spear was the one Landsax loved the most. Round Table Knight Vyke was a master of the war spear and knew well the incantations of the dragon cult. Landsax the dragon priestess loved him dearly. She saw him dance with the grace of a dragon, spinning and thrusting his spear with the force of a deadly claw. To Vyke, Landsax bestowed an enchantment worthy of the most powerful dragon lords. With a surge of sparks, Vyke's spear was engulfed by ravening red lightning. Great charged tendrils snaked their way up his weapon, coiling around the spear tip, licking the air in search of its prey. This was but one of the dragon incantations in Vyke's arsenal. Vyke had the potential to sit the Elden throne. He stood on the precipice of the royal capital, and across golden fields he basked in the radiance of the almighty Erdtree. But then, without announcement, he diverted from the ordained path of grace. He made his way back to Lanedale, but failed to climb to the foot of the Erdtree. He failed to unravel the impenetrable wall of thorns. Instead, he descended into the depths of the sewers beneath the capital, and sought an audience in the subterranean chamber of the Three Fingers. Vyke's chances of securing the role of Elden Lord were dashed, and the once noble knight was scorched by the flame of frenzy. His iron plate armour, typical of brave knights errant, was singed and blistered by the touch of the fingers, a foul debasement that left his pristine plate warped and charred. Even his war spear was not spared from the flame of frenzy's torment. Vyke had harnessed the dragon cult incantations, but when the fiery corruption seized him, Vyke turned to madness spells. With the flame of frenzy and frenzied burst incantations, amber fires swelled within his hollow eye sockets, before rupturing in a torrent of flame and madness. Landsax wept at the sight of the tainted tarnished, whom she had once loved. The Round Table Knight was dishonoured beyond salvation. Such a skilled warrior could not be allowed to roam free under the malignant influence of the frenzied flame. Thus he was sealed away within the aptly named Lord Contender's Everjail. It was a long fall from grace for Vyke. Did he make the choice for his maiden, or did some other force lure him with suggestion? Every tarnished faces great adversity on their journey to the foot of the Erdtree. Queen Marika banished Godfrey and his armies from the lands between, so that they would grow stronger waging war in exile, competing for the role of Elden Lord. In order to ease their passage through the lands, each tarnished was given a finger maiden as a guide. There's no doubt that the hardships of traversing the perils of Marika's graceless domain brings the tarnished and their maiden together, forming a strong bond. So, if a tarnished is capable of reaching the mantle of barbs, fending off all challengers, and they learn that entering the Erdtree requires the sacrifice of their maiden, you can see why one might seek any alternative. As Vyke no doubt discovered, there is another way, though it demands a payment far more severe. Vyke, in an attempt to spare his finger maiden from death, used his own flesh as kindling in her place. But how did the Round Table Knight hear of this alternate path? Well, that is where the most reviled man in all history enters the story. His name is Shabriri, and there is something quite sinister about him. It would appear that Shabriri, much like Rani after the Night of the Black Knives, is a living soul without a body. When Melina's tarnished meets him, he has occupied the corpse of a former friend, Yura the Bloody Finger Hunter. Shabriri possesses a silver tongue. Even through the mouth of a dead friend, his words drip with cunning charisma. He isolates your fear of losing your maiden and picks at it. You are about to sacrifice something precious, the life of a fair maiden that you would toss into the fiery forge, only so that you may be lord. What a horrible thing to ponder. Your ascendancy requires her sacrifice, whether she wishes it or not. But how would the lord crowned so be looked upon? Chosen tarnished and would-be lord, dare to tread the path of true rigour, spare the poor girl, and singe your own flesh in her stead. If you are prepared to show resolve and detain lordship through righteous hardship, then heed the words of I, Shabriri. Chosen Tarnished and would-be Lord, descend into the depths, far below the Erdtree capital. Seek audience with the Three Fingers and the Flame of Frenzy. If you inherit the Flame of Frenzy, your flesh will serve as kindling and the girl can be spared, setting you on the righteous path of lordship. The path of the Lord of Chaos, burn the Erdtree to the ground and incinerate all that divides and distinguishes. Ah, may chaos take the world, may chaos take the world. A truly frightening prospect, made tantalizing by Shabriri's hollow words. He promises honor, he heralds you a savior, so long as you singe your own flesh and spare the girl, and he has a point. But there's nothing more dangerous than an individual who can coat their words in glamour, cultivating a false sense of camaraderie in order to beguile you. Shabriri's offer is enticing, but it is a double-edged sword that could not only sever your hand, but bring ruin to the lands between. You need only look at the talisman, Shabriri's woe, to get an understanding of the man behind the salacious spread of madness. Its description reads, disturbing likeness of a man whose eyes have been gouged out. The corners of his mouth are upturned in an almost flirtatious manner. It is said the man named Shabriri had his eyes gouged out as punishment for the crime of slander, and with time, the blight of the Flame of Frenzy came to dwell in the empty sockets. This is the face of a man who endured a brutal punishment, yet continues to smirk at his enemies. It's no coincidence that he was charged with slander, likely for disparaging the purity of the Golden Order, or blaspheming against the greater will. The howl of Shabriri is an incantation that first came from Shabriri's lips. It is a blood-curdling shriek, empowered by the frenzied flame, to induce insanity in those who hear it. The howl's description goes on to say, it is said that the sickness of the Flame of Frenzy began with Shabriri, the most reviled man in all history. The most reviled man in all history. That's quite the accomplishment. Rani says the shattering happened an age ago. A lot has occurred between the sundering of the Elden Ring and the day Melina's Tarnished awoke in the Chapel of Anticipation. Shabriri must have been up to his antics for some time, goading honourable warriors off the path of long-lost grace, down into the Cathedral of the Forsaken, beneath the capital. Shabriri is an ambassador of the Three Fingers, and ever since his eyes were gouged from his skull, hollowed eye sockets have become a motif for the frenzied flame. Fissures to be filled with the outer god's blazing malevolence. And this brings us to a peculiar item found scattered across the lands between, the Shabriri grapes. There is a blind finger maiden named Hyetta who seeks a distant light. She believes following this light will lead her to her destiny, only she must consume Shabriri grapes in order to see it. And this is where I would like to give you a warning. Do not eat the grapes. They may be round, they may burst in your mouth, but the similarities end there, because these are not grapes, they are eyeballs. The description for a Shabriri grape reads, a yellowing, oozing eyeball of the infirm. The surface is shrivelled, and the inside is squishy, not unlike a large, overly ripe grape. Give to the blind maiden to guide her to the distant light. Shabriri only had 2 eyes. He may be an agent of chaos, but he's still human. Thus it would seem that Shabriri enacted his own punishment onto other victims, gouging out their eyes to offer to blind maidens. Hyetta suggests as much. After giving her a grape, she says, "You're not like the others who give me grapes, are you? They rest their trembling hands upon me, howling wordlessly. They gently stroke my eyes, their frail fingers, emaciated, yet still they give me the grapes. But you seem somehow firmer. Howling wordlessly, surely the one visiting Hyetta is Shabriri. When Melina's Tarnished meets him, he is inhabiting the body of Yura, but perhaps to a blind maiden he has no need to hide whatever remains of his true form. Grotesque, emaciated, even with his ruined visage, he still influences those vulnerable enough to follow him. Hyetta is not being led by destiny, she's being led by Shabriri. The only berry sweeter than the Shabriri grape is the fingerprint grape, for these ones belong to souls who were granted audience with the Three Fingers, and were clasped in its burning embrace. Hyetta may yet become a Tarnished Finger Maiden, replacing Melina, but that is a story to continue when discussing the endings of the Elden Ring. The only known fingerprint grape belongs to none other than Vyke, no longer a Round Table Knight, now he is called the Festering Fingerprint. The description of his grape reads, eyeball of the Knight Vyke, inflamed yellow, seared with a repulsive fingerprint burn, akin to those that marred his entire body. Where we left Vyke's story, the once honour-bound knight had abandoned the climb to the summit of the mountaintop, electing instead to enter the domain of the frenzied flame. Convinced by Shabriri's sharp tongue, Vyke saw a way to save his finger maiden's life. After all, she was precious to him. He was a noble knight. It was his duty to protect his maiden. Alas, Shabriri's counsel had not been entirely untrue, but Vyke had been grossly misled. Vyke was burned in place of his maiden, but madness flowed through his veins, swallowing him whole. He cast aside his dragon spells and channeled his faith into the frenzied flame incantations. He murdered his maiden and left her corpse slumped in a chair before Marika's mournful gaze, in the Church of Inhibition. When Melena's Tarnished makes their way to the site of the slaughter, Vyke appears as an invader. Is he merely returning to the scene of the crime, or perhaps somewhere beneath the wicked wildfire that engulfed his mind does he feel remorse? Vyke's downfall is made so much more tragic by the potential he possessed. He could have been a hero of legend. They say great grave gloveworts are lain on the graves of heroic spirits to comfort them in their passage back to the Erd Tree. These dolorous blossoms are given in tribute to those who died the most glorious of deaths, in the hope their stories would become legend. Had Vyke never met Shabriri, he might have been Elden Lord, and had he failed, his grave would have been blanketed by these luminescent flowers. But Vyke's integrity was used against him, and he fell spectacularly from grace, doomed to forever haunt the Lord Contender's Everjail, awaiting a Tarnished capable of putting him out of his acute misery. And that is the tragic tale of Vyke, the sickening story of Shabriri, but most importantly, it is a lesson to all of us, and that lesson is, do not eat the grapes. Thank you so much for watching. Drumora is a new channel, and I'm dedicated to seeing it grow so I can continue to tell these stories. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. Please only pledge if you can afford it. I've also started a Discord, so if you'd like to chat to me and anyone else interested in Elden Ring and Elder Scrolls, come join. Thank you so much again. My name's Drew, you've been watching Drumora, and I'll see you in the next one.